you, Agnes. Well, first of all, we would like to thank the organizers for allowing us to give this short lecture today, especially Agnes, and obviously to everyone present for being here today. Also, personally, I would like to apologize to Rafa for tricking him into being here with me today. Anyway, I hope you like it, this presentation. Here's is an index of the different topic that we will deal during the presentation. First, we will address the context in which the presentation is framed, which is virtual archaeology, background, and some of his possibilities. We will also discuss what are the problems of digital environment and data. In the third and fourth sections, we will talk about the study carried out in the Las Sileras, Córdoba, Spain. Finally, some conclusion from our study. Okay, in the 1980s, archaeologists embraced the rapidly expanding field of computer modeling and visualization as a vehicle for data exploration. It was in this context that's what we know today as virtual archaeology. Virtual archaeology was conceived. Virtual archaeology is therefore the result of four main factors. The initial factor was the rescue and salvage archaeology lobby in the UK and North America, which over the previous decade had sought to establish archaeological remains as priceless and irreplaceable resource under threat. Two, also the conception of archaeology as a craft discipline where the use of tools, whether material, digital, or conceptual, is the crucial factor here. In third place, they need to shoot for new non-invasive ways of studying archaeological heritage. And finally, the emergence of new forms of information and data. Okay, the first virtual definition was carried out by Reilly in 1990 during a CAA conference, and according to the Reilly, the term virtual archaeology could be defined as the set of computer techniques that enable the 3D visualization of the virtual and realistic representation of ancient buildings and objects whose remains have disappeared or are in such a poor conservation state that it is impossible to observe them or very difficult to interpret them. Years later, a few more definitions will emerge, will appear. One of that is, for example, cyber archaeology term created by Mauricio Forte in 1996, and is defined as the process of acquiring, restoring, and representing archaeological data using a computer. Another one, for example, the cyber archaeology dropped more or less the same mean than cyber archaeology and virtual archaeology. In the last term we have is digital archaeology. All these definitions leave us with a multiverse, veritable multiverse around the term virtual archaeology. Different definition that nevertheless allude to the same reality with minor nuance. According, in this case, with Costopoulos, we must forget the label. We are building a digital archaeology by doing archaeology digitally. This is what we do, okay? Nowadays, virtual archaeology, digital archaeology, cyber archaeology encompass numerous interesting tools that allow us to digitize and analyze the archaeological record. We can divide them into 6 main blocks. These are some of the best known in this case. As you will see in the following slides, all these techniques can be combined with each other in complex methodological flows that yield very interesting results. In the second block of this presentation, we are talking about the virtual environment and data problem, because we have a lot of new virtual data, but we have a new problem with that data. By using digitization tools, we are not only digitally documenting heritage, we are creating also a new heritage form that we must also preserve. This is a charter of the preservation of digital heritage by UNESCO. These new types of cultural heritage include not only data, but paradata too, in this case. For many different reasons, this digital archaeological heritage, this new form of archaeological heritage, it's sometimes the only visible vestige of the past. So we have to preserve, we must preserve them. Maybe the main dangers of virtual archaeology could be defined for first place, data storage and management. The second place, data disclosure and dissemination. And finally, data interpretation. The first one, data storage, maybe is the more critical, the more dramatic problem in virtual archaeology in general. Refer what, how, and where do we store such a large volume of information. That we are explaining all this problem in the next slide. So according to Terry Canny in 1997, we are living in a digital dark age. As we enter the electronic age of digital objects, it's important to know that there are new barbarians on the frontier, and that we are entering an age where much of what we know today, much of what is encoded and written electronically, will be lost forever. So we are, in my opinion, living in the middle of a digital middle age. Consequently, just like the monk of the past, it is up to librarians and archivists to take over the tradition of preserving the history and documentary heritage of our times. So the first problem we was talking about in the previous slide is the lost media. This problem derive from organizational and logistical problem into an internal level, in this case, inadequate handling of field data, digital transition, and no legal obligation protection. Potential solution, in this case, knowing what and how we are going to digitize, standardization of the data collection process, FAIR principle, the transparency principle, implementation of the political legislative framework at national and international level too, and finally, centralization and updating of archives. This is probably difficult things to do, but we must to do. Here we can see a maps where there are the main countries, the only countries that have, for example, central archives for the storage of the data, of the virtual data. For example, in our case, Rafa and me, Spain hasn't this type of centralization structure for storage the data. So another problem is the problem of disclosure and dissemination of results. Sometimes we generate highly complex, highly resolution data that we are not able to disseminate and publish correctly due to the resource and infrastructures. Audiovisual media, journal format, etc. And the final problem is maybe that certain efficiencies achieved by digital technologies create, reinforce, or obscure archaeological practice and methodology by decoupling data collection from its interpretation. About that, we have the slow archaeology, this new subdiscipline of the archaeological discipline, talk about how bad is a good decision to speed up archaeological practice, or maybe not in many cases. And now we are going to talk from our own case study, Las Sileras. Las Sileras is a megalithic complex located in Cordoba, very close to the main city, Cordoba. We can see that it's an exceptional case of study because we are develop a complex methodological workflow here. But first, my colleague Rafa, he will talking about the history of the two discoveries on the same city. So, Rafa,
thank you very much, Alexis. Thank you all. Thank you, Agnes. And I thank you. I start my part on the presentation talking about the case study of this dolmen of the Arroyo de las Sileras. This is a monumental prehistoric complex discovered more than 90 years ago, and which the Spanish War and other circumstances have buried and obscured again. So do you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next. So all began in 1932. Alexis, rule out the. Okay, thank you. During some pioneer excavation at the Roman site of Ategua in 1932. This is the 30th decade of the 19th century. 20th century, excuse me. These excavations were directed by Felix Hernandez, the archaeologist in charge of the excavation at Medina Zahara, the Umayyad Caliphate city next to Cordoba, and the academic Rafael Castejón. Samuel de los Santos, the former director of the Archaeological Museum of Cordoba, joining them to supervise the work. Next. One day, Emilio Pérez Alcázar, known as Don Emilio, an enlightened landowner and collector of antiquities, visited the excavation to take those distinguished archaeologists in his automobile to see a strange engraved stone that had appeared on his property in the bed of a stream, on a creek, really. In this old map, the Spanish National Geographic Institute, we can see the area of the discovery. At the time, it was only indicated that it was found in the bed of the so-called, or name it, Arroyo de las Sileras, stream of las Sileras. You can see the, Alexis, the next, this photograph taken in a flight in the 50s. This is the exact point of the discovery. So Samuel de los Santos became very interested in the find, making a freehand but detailed sketch. You can see in the photograph, in the slide. He was unable to take photographs, but described in detail the engravings he saw. He concluded that these were the remains of a megalithic chamber destroyed by looters who had ended up throwing the stones into the riverbed. Next. The interest of Samuel de los Santos in this movement led him to publish in 2 times. The first in 1933 in the Boletín de la Real Academia de Córdoba, a local publication, and the second one years later in 1949 in a national conference held in the Valencian country in Elche, but without providing new information. In fact, he never see the monument again. On both occasions, he emphasizes their similarities with Atlantic megalithic art set in Newgrange, Ireland, and Gabrinus, Brittany. Next. But unfortunately, the political and social situation will take a huge turnover. On 18 July 1936, the Spanish Civil Wars broke out, and Cordoba and his countryside were involved in tragic events with multiple combat episodes on the front line, which came very close to the site of the find and in the real world. In fact, those photos you see, some very famous, were taken in these fields near Espejo, where Don Emilio lived, in the summer of 1936 by Robert Capa and Gerda Taro, renowned photojournalist. So the violence spread throughout the territory, and in a first phase affected landowners and the local elite, the rural elite. In August 1936, Emilio Pérez Alcázar, Don Emilio, was murdered while armed villagers take it to the countryside by force and shot. In fact, his remains, along with many others recovered from mass graves, were taken very late in Franco's regime to what is known as the Valle de los Caídos, a megalomaniac complex constructed by Franco to honor his heroes using Republican prisoners. With the final victory of General Franco's troops, supported by Queipo de Llano from Seville, more than 4,000 people were murdered in Córdoba, bringing the total to 11,000 throughout the province. Most were planned execution for political reason or mere subsistence far from the front line. In this context, Samuel de los Santos, the former director of the Archaeological Museum of Córdoba, lost his job as director, moving to live outside the city for many years. Fortunately, he saw his life thanks to the support of the archaeologist Julio Martinez Santaolalla, a phalangist and close to Oswald Mengin and the other members of the Ahnenerbe. It's a curious history. So after the end of the war, the location of the monument seemed to vanish. The mention published since then, from the 1960s to the 2009, consider it lost, destroyed, buried, disappeared, or even doubt its existence, suggesting an accidental confusion with a rock with fossil remains, like ammonites or similar. So the history changed in May 2009 when I was brought in my PhD thesis, Googling for bibliographical references. I came across the website of a local cycling club, which showed photographs of some rocks engraved in the bed of a stream. Although no one had seen the photographs of the monument, there was no doubt it was the Arroyo de las Sileras monument, unlocated since the 1930s. But the creek was not Sileras, but the Abaded stream. There was a confusion of the name, another nervy. So this is the monument, the remains of the monument, located in April 2009. A few days later, we arrived at the site and checked in situ the condition of the remains. And effectively, it was composed of 3 blocks with engravings which seem to fit together at the time, originally, and a 4th block of 3 meters long with the appearance of a pillar or menhir whose engraving seemed to have disappeared a long time ago. Unfortunately, the mandatory notice of the discovery to the local heritage authority had an effect that we neither expected nor wanted at all. Just a few months after the communication and unannounced, we learned that the blocks had been moved to the Archaeological Museum this way. Our initial project for on-site documentation prior to any future archaeological fieldwork turned it into a material study in the storerooms of the Archaeological Museum of Córdoba. Before that, we were able to visit the discovery site to document with photographs the prints and extraction negatives left by the blocks so that they could be repositioned in the future, with the idea of in the future relocate the original position of these blocks. So in 1910, our work at the museum involved taking a meticulous series of digital photographs with a Canon EOS to support the reproduction of the engravings alongside conventional archaeological drawings, as well as clearing the engravings with the help of grazing light and sequential photography. For this, we have the invaluable help of the professors Mimi Bueno Ramirez and Rodrigo Balbín Berman of the University of Alcalá de Henares. The next, Alexis. And here, the photo composition of 2010 with grazing light and without any photogrammetric methodology still. unknown to me. Unknown to me. This first approximation made it possible to identify many engraved motifs, some of them very worn by the water current, and also many others that had not been seen in 1932. Water erosion and the presence of the fossil bioturbation, ichneofossil, for example, in this sedimentary material, made it very difficult to identify the engraved motifs. And here, this is the drawings, the traditional, analogic, but not bad. There is a third piece, the fifth fragment, Alexis, show this fragment was discovered during the archaeological survey 8 meters away from the original deposit, but in the same river bed, not seen in the 30s with the original discovery. Fortunately or not, this is still in place. So the next archaeological survey also allowed us to locate various groupings of materials, archaeological materials, pottery, etc., identifying several sites nearly dated between the early Neolithic, 5400, 4800 BC in the Andalusia, the datings of the early Neolithic, and the late Neolithic, early Copper Age, 3300 to 2900 BC. In any case, the reconstruction and knowledge of the original position of the monumental complex as a starting point to any future archaeological work continued to be a priority. And this way, Alexis came in.
Okay, so taking up previous work, we decided to apply a multi-scale digitization in all these contexts. A microspatial digitization, mesospatial digitization, and macrospatial digitizations. The macro-scale digitization is used for digitizing large areas of landscape. In our case, we use a drone, Mavic 3 Classic, for covering approximately 15 hectares of the surrounding area near to the river course. In second place, we apply to a mesoscale digitization. In this case, to digitize immovable big site object structure or small areas. Part of the river course where the rock with engraving were originally located. And finally, we use the microscale digitization to digitize each of the engraved block and fragment of rock we discovered. During the macro scale digitization carried out with a drone, we put into the neo-orthographic orthomosaic produced by the 3D model obtained in this macro scale digitization for putting the previous information geolocation of the previous studies was expanded in 2022. In 2099 and 2010. For this purpose, we use first time Drone Link, an app for programming automatic flights in drones for covering this area of 15 hectares approximately. After we produce the 3D model in Agisoft Metashade, and through Agisoft Metashade, we create a digital elevation model and orthomosaic. During the mesoscale digitization, due to the vegetation surrounding the megalithic complex are very dense, were very dense, we decided to apply a pedestrian photogrammetry to using a normal DSLR camera for producing a more or less 20 meters 3D model of the river course. Here we produce two a model, a digital elevation model. Through that digital elevation model, we rediscover the rock that remain in the river course. Finally, we apply the microscale digitization to recording to digitize the four main rock block with engravings. More or less, this is some information about the process, about the high resolution model we made, and about not only the rock model, even the riverbed model and the drum model too. Okay, with all this information, all this virtual data, we decided to relocate the engraved stone in their original position. For that, we use Blender and making an anastylosis process, putting the original block in their original position. Here's another picture about this process. In this case, a render made it in Blender. And after this anastylosis process, we decided to study deeply the different blocks, the different fragments with engraving. For this purpose, we use 4 tools. Agisoft Metashade itself, the Agisoft Metashade had different tools for improving the visualization of the 3D models. For example, doing digital elevation model. And also we use MeshLab, another free software, another open source software. With the MeshLab have different tools to know as shaders, so you can use for the same improve the visualization of the geometry of a 3D model. Finally, we decided to use two software, specific software for the rock art studies. First of that is Topography Visualization Toolbox, software developed by the University of Gothenburg, and Xshade, another software, in this case developed by the Princeton University. This is one of the digital elevation model and MeshLab shader taken in Agisoft and MeshLab. And here some of the results about putting the 3D model into the topographic visualization tool and Xshade. You can see that the engraving can be seen very well in this case using these filters, these tools, and this software. With all this information obtained about the virtual analysis and the previous anastylosis process, we could see that the 3 of the 4 fragments located in the riverbed of the Las Sileras, they were only one block. So with another anastylosis process, we decided to put into a same block to complete an archaeological puzzle. This is the final result that Rafa and me present in a new article currently is in press, but probably in July, I don't remember, maybe July of June, will be available for all. Now, in this four part, Rafa is going to talk a little bit about the engravings located in the different block using these virtual tools. So, Rafa.
So it's not too much to say, only the presence of concentric cycles, the sample cycles, and spiral and composite spiral. Other lines engraved, and the parallels are is a complex question, because traditionally this type of engravings what compared to Atlantic megalithic examples in Ireland, in Brittany, also in Great Britain. But this is true that in central Andalusia, in the southern Spain, recently we have many examples of representation with the concentric cycles and spirals ones. For example, not always associated to megalithic supports, to megalithic architecture, but natural platforms, the rock shelters, outcrops, etc. Natural manifestations. So is it not possible still today to say if Sileras monument was a megalithic architecture or was a natural support, a table of natural support? In this geography of geology, local geology is very common to say the tables of stone tables of sandstone. So it is not possible still today to say if we are face architecture manifestation or natural manifestation and engraved manifestation. So this is always the comparison with the concentric cycle in the water, for example, the water cycle, for example. This other example in Ireland, for example, this Newgrange, is famous Newgrange architectural engravings, and also some stele, in this case from Sardinia. So, Alexis.
Okay, so finally, we can say after this deep study carried out to the Las Sileras, that the engraved rock seemed to be located in a site occupied during the early Neolithic, and whose occupation could extend until the early Copper Age in an area of the Cordovan countryside where there was practically no evidence of sites from this chronology. So Las Sileras could be a unique case of this type of sites. At least 3 of the digitized fragments appears to have formed a single block, the break in which are still a mystery for us. The triple scale photogrammetry was essential to relate engraved stone to their immediate environment. In 4 place, virtual analysis is an exceptional tool for the study of prehistoric engraved rock art. And finally, Virtual Archaeology has allowed us to reconstruct the monument in his last known deposition location, but not unfortunately the possible architecture of which it may have formed a part in the landscape of the first Andalusian farmers. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alexis and Rafa, for these fabulous presentations.